Hi everyone. Hello. I'm Tina Olson. I'm the Associate Director of the Center for the Study of Gender and Sexuality. Welcome to today's program. The program is jointly hosted by the two centers. We're going to first start with a couple of announcements.
Okay. Just wanted to let you know about a couple programs coming up this week. Tomorrow night, we'll be hosting Damon Young from Very Smart Brothers, and he has a new memoir out called What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker, a memoir in essays, and that's tomorrow at 7 over at Say Hall. And then on Friday and Saturday, we're hosting a conference called Nativism, White Power, and Anti-Immigrant Violence in the United States. And that's starting Friday at 5 and continuing Saturday morning at 9, and it's going to be at the International House. So these are on our website. There's a few flyers out there if you want to take one home. I also wanted to just make an announcement that we do have sexual assault deans on call here, two of them, Tobias and Stephanie. You're over here in the corner here. They'll be here in the event and in the conference room, so you need to talk to them privately. We appreciate them coming. Thank you.
Another event I want to mention, or a couple of events I want to mention, this week we'll have Carl Schoonover, who's a cinema professor, who'll be talking about makeup and scrap economies according to Queer Underground, so please check that out here on Thursday. Next week we'll also have Virgie Tovar, who'll be talking about Lose Hate, Not Weight, an intersectional feminist approach to diet culture. And then next Thursday, Professor Eve Ewing will be talking about Into the Daybreak, representing Black feminism across genre, which is another co-hosted event between the two centers. So please join us for those things. I also want to mention that today's event is going to be live streamed via Facebook, and so the screen will be focused toward the front of the space. So you won't be broadcast, but if you're asking questions, your voice will be broadcast. If there's a reason you don't want that not to happen, please let someone here on staff know. Tate, will you raise your hand? Tate is wearing a yellow sweater, so if you have any concerns about that, she's a perfect person to talk to about that. Mustard. Mustard yellow.
Goldenrod.
I want to also note that there's a gender-neutral bathroom on this floor, just beyond that wall, over by the kitchen, and then there are more bathrooms down in the basement. So again, welcome. About today's program. Increasing attention to celebrity sexual abuse involving entertainers like R. Kelly and Michael Jackson has called into question how mainstream culture often silences victims of these assaults while protecting abusers. And fans and supporters, an important difference, are often complicit in protecting sexual abusers in the name of fandom. With today's program, When Our Faves Fail Us, Rape Culture, Pop Culture, and Celebrity, we hope to deepen discussion on the intersections of pop culture and rape culture and how this moment challenges all of us to take stock of our roles as listeners and viewers in either perpetuating the violence or making strides to end it. Jenn M. will share her analysis and lead the discussion. She is a doctoral candidate in political science here at the University of Chicago, where she's also received a graduate certificate in Gender and Sexuality Studies. Jenn's research is in Black politics with a focus on group threat, gender and sexuality, public opinion, political psychology, and behavior. In her dissertation, Race, Risks, and Responsibilities, Mapping Black Americans' Reactions to Group Threat, she revisits the racial threat hypothesis by challenging the canonical focus on feelings of threat within white subgroups. Rather, her research centers on the experience of Black Americans and interrogates the role of threat in influencing Black Americans' political action. As a recipient of many prestigious honors and awards, Jenn is a 2018-2019 residential fellow at the Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Culture, and a 2018-2019 teaching fellow at the Center for Teaching, both here at the University of Chicago, here in this building, as a matter of fact. She was a 2017-2018 Urban Doctoral Fellow at the University of Chicago, 2017 Women of Color Leadership Project inductee with the National Women's Studies Association, and a 2016-2017 American Political Science Association Minority Fellow. She's a highly sought after writer and speaker whose written work has appeared in the Washington Post, Teen Vogue, The Root, Ebony, Marie Claire, Daily Dot, The Independent, as well as many others. She's also appeared on Al Jazeera, WGN, and Chicago Tonight to discuss issues of race, class inequity, police reform, and violence against young Black people, and tactics for action against the continued disinvestment of communities of color. Jenn also co-runs the award-winning race and culture platform Water Cooler Convos, and co-hosts the That Black Couple podcast, an honest look at Blackness, culture, and adult life. She's the founder of the Worth Campaign, a nonprofit committed to empowering young Black women and girls, where she writes about social issues and pop culture. She is a proud native of Oakland, California, and a transplant to our now just nearly freezing temperatures in the Midwest. And we do hope that she's kept her down coat and other winter provisions, because she soon will be moving to Syracuse, where she will be joining the faculty of Syracuse University, Department of Political Science, as an assistant professor in August of 2019. Sorry, help me in welcoming Ms. Jackson.
All right, so I'm going to say a couple things as we get started. The first is I am not going to stand here and lecture you all today. If you came here for theory, Tate, help me out. Why is it doing this? So if you came here for high theory, you came here to talk about Judith Butler, and things like that. I'm not going to do it. What I'm going to do is help facilitate dialogue about a topic, an issue that a lot of us know very intimately, but often struggle to name and often struggle to actually identify in ways that are meaningful and actually powerful enough for us to do something about it, right? So while I'm here to facilitate the dialogue and to help us work through it, I am not in any way different from any of you. People who know me, who have been in my classes, who talk with me, know that I say that all of us are just a little bit trash. I say a little bit because some of us are a lot of it trash, and we don't admit it, right? We're all complicit in systems of oppression. We're all complicit in processes that harm others, whether we want to admit it or not. And I'm not going to stand here and pretend as though I have some type of special knowledge that will kind of set me apart from anyone else in the room, right? So what I do have is I've read some books, been in school for a long time. A lot of you have also read some books and been in school for a very long time. We're all in a very privileged space, right? We're all sitting here in this room. We all bring our own experiences and our own knowledge to this space. And I want us to bring that to the conversation today, right? And we're going to start by watching a quick video, and we'll get to what it all means in terms of the larger cultural aspect that we're talking about today.
A German folktale, The Pied Piper, speaks of a man hired by the town to lure rats away. This man, dressed in multicolored coat, plays his flute and draws the rats in with magic. The piper is a hero of the people until they decide not to pay. 1 year later, he returns to the German town and uses his music to lure away the children instead. R. Kelly marries Aaliyah at the age of 15, and we sing along to Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. We find out that Aaliyah met R. Kelly at the age of 12, and somehow our opinions of him stay on the upbeat. The children's choir learns the lyrics to I Believe I Can Fly, and a flute plays somewhere in R. Kelly's home. R. Kelly calls himself the Pied Piper of R&B, and we make the excuse before we make the connection. After the first allegation, we thought it takes at least 2 notes to strike a chord. After the second allegation, we gave him 3 Grammys. After the third and fourth allegations, we ignored them simply because we just really like the songs. And all we can think about is the next family reunion. And who better to sing for our electric slide? And how else will we step in the name of love? See, a rap sheet these days isn't worth the price of the playlist at the cookout. away while all the adults are distracted in church, most likely singing. R. Kelly tells us he is devoting his life to the Lord, and an angel drowns out the video footage. R. Kelly hands us a hit. We give him back forgiveness. He hands us a 19-minute song, and the melody makes us forget the definition of a predator, makes us forget all the little girls of color that he wrote those songs for in the first place. And again, no one speaks up when black girls are abused. Like, the better the song, the more invisible black girls become. But this time, we know exactly where the cult is in the city of Atlanta, and still the town prefers the Piper's music. Almost as if entertainment is more important than the allegations. Almost as if all their voices together isn't the right type of choir. And again, rape and misogyny is just another part of the culture, tightly woven into harmony. And again, we learned that music is the best distraction and the worst black magic. We have taught our girls that they are everything short of a symphony. Tell me, is the music really that special? When one man's voice can sing over them all, when we can hold a note before we hold a man accountable, when the piper is realer than any folk tale we know, and we surrender their bodies to pay the price.
Okay, so this is Natasha Hooper. The poem is called The Pied Piper. And I wanted to start off with that because I wanted us to start thinking very clearly about what we're talking about today. As a survivor myself, and as someone who struggles daily with this concept, the idea that there are ways that we have violence that we endure. There's violence that we sometimes see and witness, but that we figure out ways to justify or to accept because of the types of cultural artifacts that we want to have in our lives that are acceptable to us. I want us to sit with that, right? There's some words that she said here. She said accountability. And she said things about how, the music is just that good to us. There's sounds that we want to hear the music so bad. We want to go to the cookout. We want to step in the name of love. And so we're willing to drown out voices. We're willing to silence others, right? So the first thing I want to do, instead of talking so much, is ask y'all, since I heard some mms and some hmms, I want to ask you how that video made you feel. How did it make you feel? We have a microphone, right? And you don't have to say your name because I know it's being recorded and y'all, I don't know how to see me on the video, right? How did it make you feel? Who needs a mic?
We live in a rape culture, and we're all complicit in that. And that's really disturbing to me. And the fact that there is a pecking order to who is disposable in the world, whether it's gender or ethnicity, is really disturbing, because I'm old enough to have gone through the feminist movement. And as a Latina sister, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I'm on a campus of very, very expensive tuition and higher learning, and that really messes with my head.
I think for me, it made me feel really convicted and really complicit in this, because one of the first things she said was that we listen to Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. And I love Aaliyah. I used to dress like her, really looked up to her, and was listening to that song as recently, I'm 23 now, listening to that song as recently as when I was 18, 19. When I think now, it's yeah, you could have, you knew the allegations, sure you were a kid when, trials and stuff like that started happening, but at that age and at the level of intelligence I subscribe to myself, I should have heard that song and knew that, and I knew R. Kelly wrote that song, and I still listened to it, and I still sang along, and I still was oh yeah, it's nothing, Aaliyah married R. Kelly, and I didn't think anything of it. So I just think my awakening was a little late.
One of the things that she kind of said that, you pointed out, which was like, oh, we kind of look over it because, we want to listen to the songs at the cookouts. We want to, enjoy ourselves listening to the music without having to think about all the extra things that come with it. And to me, that really stood out because it's like, in general, a lot of people do get looked over because it's like, okay, well, we don't want to focus on this. We want to look at the positive, and it's like, you can't, it's like drowning out voices just to live in a positive light, like ignoring everybody else's struggle just for your own benefit. And it's crazy because it just makes you think about, honestly, a lot of stuff is coming up out of the dark now. And it's like, to a point where I was having a discussion with my father, and we were like, he was like, it's a lot of stuff like this going on in the entertainment business, and it's just like time and place when people get exposed for it. And I'm like, that doesn't normalize it and doesn't make it okay. But it's at a point where it's like, okay, well, since we're finding all of this stuff, why aren't we digging up other people's dirt? Like, we need to, it's a lot of voices being silenced. And it's the reason why they're being silenced, and it's the reason why people are giving them certain opportunities when they want them to be heard. Oh, now we want you to be heard, so we're going to let you shine. And it's like, I don't know, it's just a lot going on with that I just can't really wrap my head around.
Can we have one more? We have one more? We're just waving our hands. I see one in the back over here.
Since this allegations or news came up on 35, it came up when Ignition was a banger, and we would sing it all the time growing up in college. Now, looking back, at the time we just thought, I grew up in Texas, and still in Texas, one can still marry with parents or consent at 15, 16. And there's been a lot of talk about how they want to lower their voting age to 16. So I'm conflicted whether or not somebody can make a reasonable decision without maybe us projecting whether that person was being influenced with their power, with this artist's power or whatnot. So I don't know. I struggle with this daily.
Absolutely.
So thank you all for sharing that. The reason why I want to do that is, first of all, I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and talk the whole time. But also because what I want us to be thinking about is not just about how these conversations are rooted in just celebrity culture, right? In a lot of respects, these are things that we take home with us, right? These are things that we've learned and been socialized in. These are things that we have done in our own personal life. We hear people talking about their parents who are thinking about these issues. We talk about when we're listening to music in college, and this has become kind of socialized for us, and now we're thinking about larger things like policy and what the voting age should be, right? So we're not just talking about this kind of nebulous, ethereal concept as though R. Kelly is just some kind of person out in the ether, or Michael Jackson, the issues that the issues that are raising up now about Michael Jackson are kind of in the ether, or Kevin Spacey, or Woody Allen, right? All the things that we know now to be true, right? These are issues that we take along with us, but they also shape the ways that we interact with others in our personal lives and our daily lives, right? So the reason why that's important is because I know for me, someone brought up age ain't nothing but a number. And I want us to think about the first time we heard about one of these people. If I can remember mine. I remember when I first discovered R. Kelly. It was age ain't nothing but a number. It was the album cover. Who remembers the album cover? Yeah, it had Aaliyah in the front, and she had the sunglasses on, and really cool leather on, and the bandana, and she looked dope, right? She looked like, oh my gosh, like she is lit. She had her hair swooped, right? Everybody wants to be Aaliyah, right? And in the background of this image is R. Kelly, and he's kind of faded out. And now as an adult, like it looks creepy as hell, right? Like now you're like, who is that weird like stalker dude, like in the back, kind of faded, like I can't see his face. But we all knew it was R. Kelly, right? We all knew it was R. Kelly. And I remember being, younger, 13, 14, and thinking, right, like, oh wow, like, how lucky is she? How lucky is she that she gets to have this album, that she gets to be this big star? Look at her cool lipstick, look at her outfit, look at her hair, right? And that comes from somewhere, that comes from a cultural process, right? That comes from this idea that she is kind of special, right? Something special about her that allows her to be kind of wanted by this older man, right? And we learn that from our communities. We hear people say things like, oh, well, she is very good looking, right? That's why he wanted her. She's good looking, right? Or he's a very powerful man. He could have anyone he wants. So he picked her, right? And so we find out these kind of processes are not just kind of like our own internalized kind of methods of understanding how coupling works, right? This is not heterosexual coupling, right? This is grooming, right? This is predation. And there are ways that patriarchy, misogynoir, has taught us that certain types of grooming, right, and predation is okay, right? And so when I think back to that album cover, as I was thinking about this topic, and I wrote something a couple months ago about this topic, about the album cover, and I felt dirty, right? I felt very guilty, because I thought, oh my gosh, I bought that album, and I played it all the time. I played it on repeat. I know all the words. I know every word. This is a song that R. Kelly wrote. This is an album where he was behind it. It's called Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. And she was 15 and telling all of us it's okay for me to be with a 27-year-old man because age is nothing but a number. So I was being socialized to believe that age was nothing but a number. Right? Right? Now what's important about this is these are our early memories. Right? These are how we learn when we first get started kind of thinking about who we are, how we're socially located. We think about things like intersectionality that tells us that social position and our location of power is critically important, right? Aaliyah, a young black woman, a young black girl, who is now kind of entering the limelight, who is trying to figure out how to become a star, how she's going to find where she belongs in this large entertainment industry. And she gets kind of attached to this megastar who's already in his 20, 30 years old, right? Now we're thinking, okay, well, this is both an opportunity for her because she's closer in proximity to power, but what is she being exploited for, right? What are the risks to her? And then you start thinking about as you learn more and more about R. Kelly, right? So how many folks in the room learned something about like Michael Jackson or R. Kelly or Woody Allen or Kevin Spacey or somebody who they now know is an abuser very, very early on? Okay, where's the other microphone? We can remember our first memories? Okay, I want to hear some first memories. First memories of folks who we now know are abusers.
I think my first memory of Woody Allen is when he married his stepdaughter, or his, yeah, I thought that was just really creepy and ugly and inappropriate and every other kind of negative way to look at that. And it seemed to be okay with the public at large that he married. That was my first recollection of Woody Allen, and I wasn't really crazy about him in the first place, and I certainly didn't like him very much after that.
We have some other first memories of folks that became our faves, people we did like before we found out they were abusers. Michael Jackson. Y'all not gonna tell me y'all didn't like Michael Jackson.
I'll go again. Michael Jackson. So my first, I think, vivid memory of Michael Jackson was like when iTunes first became a thing and you could see like your top played songs. And mine was Human Nature, and I was like, this is gonna be my wedding song. So I played it like 60 times. I listened to it every day. And I thought it was just like the most beautiful song in the whole world.
I'm from the same town as Kevin Spacey in New Jersey, and growing up, like, it was a big deal. Like, people talked about him a lot because people don't really like New Jersey, and so being from the same town as an Oscar-winning actor was, like, something notable. And I remember watching The Usual Suspects and thinking, like, this is the coolest person ever. And then, I think it was now 1.5 or 2 years ago when like the first waves of stuff really started to come out about him, thinking like American Beauty is like a lot more disturbing now. But yeah, I think that was one of the ones that hit like closer to home.
So I'm only 20, so I like a lot of the stuff from Michael Jackson and his like first trial wasn't really like, I didn't really know about it until recently. But I do know that like when I do remember hearing about it, like you'd see jokes about it on like Family Guy or something, and like I didn't totally understand what that meant, but like it was definitely there. But I was like 12 and I was just like, oh, let's learn the Thriller dance because that's like super cool and it's like crazy how he can do that with his body and like that's just like he's so talented. And so I guess it was just like something that I definitely know was brought up but was never fully explained to me by anyone. And so then it just seemed like it was fine for me to like love his music and like everything like that.
I just wanted to say the first time I learned about R. Kelly was when this video came out that was kind of reining in. People were saying, oh, that really isn't him, and that's, you know, that's not a young girl, that's somebody else, or maybe it's his brother, and on and on and on. And I think there was some suspicion at that time. And I mean, I like R. Kelly. I didn't always associate his music with his name, so I didn't always know which music was his. But I do recall that, and I was caught up in my own thing at the time and going to school, so I didn't give it much attention, even though there was a lot of hoopla and a lot of buzz about it.
I saw a hand in the back. Can we go back over there, the window? Thank you.
I think the one that hurt me the most was probably Bill Cosby, because he defined Black family for a lot of people. And I, like from Fat Albert, I'm aging myself a little bit now, but from like Fat Albert to the Cosby Show to Different World, like Bill Cosby really was that guy. And now I can't even watch that anymore. And he also like destroyed a lot of other people's money who were getting money from that. So like that one hurt probably more than R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, any of them. But Bill Cosby really broke how I saw family.
I think it's interesting for my story to follow up on yours because it's about allegiances to certain kinds of ideals. And I went to theater school at UCLA, and it was well known that Kevin Spacey would go to the college bars to pick up men. And we were all thrilled because we just wanted someone to be out and famous and gay and happy, and we had this allegiance to a fantasy of a new kind of social and political subject, and then had to deal with what he was actually doing at the time.
So, I am a certain age, proud of it, and I remember giving my dad the Bill Cosby book that he wrote about being a dad. And my father looked at me, and he was trying his best not to be mean, but he shared a story with me because Bill Cosby had come to our house here in Chicago for a wedding. And my dad did tell me finally, he said, well, I don't like him. And he never told me exactly why. And, but he gave me some indications of something wasn't right. And so when this story broke, I went, aha, because my father was a man, and he was not a gossiper, so he knew something was not right about Bill Cosby, and it was probably in a man-to-man talk. And so when the story came out, I went, oh my God, Dad, really? Wow, you knew all the time, but he never said exactly what it was, because at that time we liked Cosby, the Cosby Show, the Fat Albert, all of that. So when it came out, my thought was, it's true, because when you get 20 people in the same room, and they're all saying the same thing. I know this is America and you're innocent until proven guilty. However, in the back of my head with my dad, I'm going, true. Sad. And I know some places are still trying to run his shows, or just like the music, Michael Jackson. And I'm going, wow, you guys are still giving him the time of day. Even on the news, they're still giving him the time of day.
I just want to say I found it like kind of interesting because I'm 17, so like when the whole Bill Cosby thing came out, with me growing up, I did watch the Cosby Show, but I guess it wasn't more like it wasn't something I grew up watching, so I didn't have a stronger connection to it. So for me, I was able to see like, oh no, you're a rapist, you should go to jail. And it was another thing, like me and my father have a lot of talk, so he was talking about it. And just to see his perspective and then like my older siblings' perspective, and it was like kind of interesting how people know the truth, but again like try to kind of have it like, oh, you know, they looked at Bill Cosby as like, you know, a father figure, like that's kind of what he represented. So it's like not wanting to see somebody in that certain light. So it's like, to me, not having that filter, it's like, okay, well, I understand this, but he's also an actor, so he can be a whole nother person that you don't know. And I understand that people are like, oh, he does a lot for the community, he's doing this, he's doing that, he's working on this, that, and the third. But I'm like, at the end of the day, it doesn't stop what he's been doing. Like, he's rapist. So why should this feel like, I feel like it's really hard for people to look outside of a filter, because I can admittedly say like Michael Jackson, again, I am young, but I did kind of grow up listening to him more. And like Michael Jackson and R. Kelly, my first time ever hearing of them doing anything like that was like on like media or TV shows where it's like kind of joking. My first time hearing about R. Kelly doing anything was on the Boondocks. So it was like, that episode to me was like, okay. So I went and I went to ask, I'm like, did this really happen like this? And then they were like, yeah, like this happened. And I'm like, and people are still like listening to him, like he's on television on a lot of different platforms where they're actually, you know, making fun of the situation.
Yeah.
So nobody really thought that this was an issue, to the point where that's somebody's personal story. They're being humiliated multiple times, and it's like people are really not seeing a problem with this. So yeah, it was just really interesting to me.
Yeah, so I just want to say I'm a dancer, right? And so for me, like Michael Jackson is one of those people that every dancer I know, even the people that were Michael Jackson's age, they're all like, oh, Michael Jackson, man, that's the greatest, man. So the style that he was popping. So even then, it's like you have certain, he was one of those celebrities that didn't, was not like a culture, right? So like he learned from the proper teachers and this and that, and ingratiated himself into the style and so on and so forth. So his contributions to like hip hop and pop culture are so strong and like immortal almost that it's really difficult to grapple with. And then too, the fact that he's dead also plays like a part in it too, because now it's like, well, he's dead, so technically he can't hurt anybody anymore, but his estate still get like funding right from his song. So yeah, it's tough. And then again, yeah, still being a dancer, so you're in the community and you go to jams and you hear Michael Jackson play it, or people are like, oh, well, you know, yeah, you know that he maybe he did, you know, that, but you know, the culture, man, it's like, I don't know about that.
Right. I appreciate that. So I want us to pull some things out of that conversation that we just said. One of the words I heard in the back was the word allegiance. And I want us to sit with the word allegiance. I want us to think about the word culture, right? And I want us to start thinking about how these kind of connections to these celebrities or our faves, right, are also tethered to our own commitments, right? We're talking also, I've heard people talking about folks' estates getting money from the proceeds of our listenership, right? Us being in audiences associated with R. Kelly or associated with Woody Allen, us paying for movie tickets, right? So there's this idea that we are participating, actively participating in the culture that produces and also sustains these people, right? So when we think about that first memory, right, there's also the last memory. And we heard a couple last memories, right? Some of the last memories are pretty terrible, right? Some of the last memories are pretty bad. I heard some people in the room say, yeah, I saw a video. I saw something on the news. I heard some stories. I found some things out that made me very uncomfortable, right? But what's interesting, I think that we should talk about, and part of the reason, the primary reason why we're here, right, is the in-between, right? And this is what I think is coming out. The Boondocks episode on R. Kelly is actually a really good example, right? Or when we think about Bill Cosby and the fact that it was comedians that were quintessential, who were critical to us actually starting to think about Bill Cosby as an abuser, right? The fact that it was the culture of comedy that helped us to see that these people were actively harming other folks, right? But then we still have some abusers who still are actively making money, right? Still very much still making films. Yes? I don't think Woody Allen has done shit. Excuse my language. I don't think he's been accountable for anything, right? Right? So some folks have been dragged, right? Some folks have been held accountable. R. Kelly, who we just saw the 6-part series that Dream Hampton created in January, right? But this has been 2 decades in the making. 2 decades in the making. Dozens of young folks have had their lives irrevocably harmed. And 2 decades in the making, right? Bill Cosby, dozens and dozens and dozens of women have come forward and been silenced because of his contributions to the community, because he's done so much for Black people, because he gave to so-and-so university, right? Because he's respectable and told us to pull our pants up and name our kids something that doesn't end in Isha. Correct? Yeah. So I'm saying all this to say that there are ways that we should also be thinking not just about rape culture as the process of kind of instantiating sexual violence against certain groups of people, but also wrapped up in a host of other oppressive systems, right? So as we're thinking about this, this is also wrapped up in patriarchy, capitalism, heteronormativity, right? So as we're talking about this, we're saying, oh, well, if you can give hush money, then we'll kind of wash away the sins of rape culture, right? If you can put enough money into a school or university, if you can build something in a neighborhood, then we don't mind if you actually harm the children that live in that neighborhood, right? Because you did so much for them. The dissonance, right? The dissonance, right? But I want us to also understand our own complicity in that, and that's what I'm calling the in-between. The in-between is when we are standing around somewhere with our friends, and somebody says something like, oh, well, you know, somebody Monica Lewinsky'd on that dress. Who? Somebody said, who's Monica Lewinsky? No. I was gonna say. We've heard this. That's rape culture. Correct? Right? When we think about the power dynamics between Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, I don't care what Hillary Clinton says. I don't care how many times she tries to convince herself that there was some type of consensual relationship between Monica Lewinsky and her husband. We know that he was the president of the United States. Yes? We know that, right? If we know nothing else, we know he was the president of the United States. Yes. Okay, and she was an intern. Yes. Okay, so when we think about power, right, we're talking about power here, correct? And so the in-between is this conversation that we need to have about how these things turn up in our daily lives, the conversations that we have with friends, the things we overhear in the locker room, right? The stuff that Hannibal Buress says on his comedy set. Yes, Hannibal Buress is the person who made the comedy jokes about Bill Cosby, and people said, hey, maybe we should think about that. Yes? Okay, so that's what I'm calling the in-between. And I want us to grapple with that because each of us participates in that in-between, right? So we hear that first story, so I can think back to the first time I saw the Thriller video, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I've never seen anything like this before. This is life-changing to me. I was a little kid, I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, and I thought it was a movie, and I saw Michael Jackson, and he looked, I thought he was like God, right? He could do no wrong to me, right? And between that and to today, I have experienced people talking about what he did, right? And I had conversations with myself. Well, maybe he didn't do that because, you know, he's so talented. Why would he do that? That's the shit we say, right? Oh, well, but he has so much money. Like, who with that much money would do that kind of stuff, right? But he seems like such a good person. Like I know him. Because he's my cousin. You know? But, you know, I mean, he's good looking, I mean, to somebody, so like... Right? But then we have to understand that rape culture is not about attraction. It's not about how one looks, right? Again, it's about power, right? It's about how we all participate in a system where we can get access to certain benefits, certain privileges, right? How we move in and through these systems for certain types of gain, right? Who we are able to silence, who we are able to actively erase, right? Okay? And I want us to think about that because it feels dirty and it feels bad. And it makes us feel challenged, right? And it's in that feeling challenged where we can actually enact real change. So the goal today is to actually leave here with some tools and mechanisms to actually think about how we can change that culture, right? How we can work within our own networks, our own communities, our own families, with our friends, our children, our loved ones, our partners, to actually think about how we can act change, right? Right? Because the thing is, like, everyone says, oh, what can we do? I can't end R. Kelly, he's too big. What am I gonna do, stop going to his concerts? I don't go anyway, right? So everyone says, oh, well, I'm not gonna buy his tickets and I'll stop playing them on Spotify. I'm done, right? That's not enough, right? There's more that we can do. And the reason why we should think about that is because there's implications, right, to what's happening. So I want us to think about, I said I wouldn't get off theoretical and stuff. I'm not going to. We're not gonna talk about Judith Butler tonight. We're not going to. So, do y'all remember the blog Racialicious? Latoya Peterson used to write the Racialicious. It's okay, it was a long time ago. But she's fantastic. And I love her article called The Not Rape Epidemic, right? So this idea of being not raped is critically important, right? This is something that I think a lot of us have used to justify violence against certain groups of people, right? We have figured out ways to make it okay because the violence is so ubiquitous and omnipresent. It happens so frequently that out of a space of despair, of not knowing what to do with it, not knowing how to end it, we figure out how to justify that violence, right? So she says, not rape was being pressured into losing your virginity in a swimming pool pump room to keep your older boyfriend happy. Not rape was waking up in the middle of the night to find a trusted family friend in bed with you and having nightmares about something that you can't remember during the daylight hours. Not rape was having your mother's boyfriends ask you for sexual favors. Not rape was feeling the same group of boys grope you between classes day after day after day. Not rape was being 12 years old, having a boyfriend who was 24 and trading sex for free rides, pocket money, Reeboks, and a place to stay when your mother was tripping. Right? So I bring this up because when we start to think about something like being not raped, we realize how frequently people are not raped. Did we catch that? Right? When we think about the not rape epidemic and how frequently sexual violence happens and how much sexual abuse happens and how often we go, that's not rape, 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 that's not rape. We figure out all these different ways to figure out what's not rape, right? But we really actually work to think about the sexual violations that happen to folks' bodies, right? We really talk about consent. We really talk about power and survival, right? So here Peterson's helping us think about needing money to survive, needing money for shoes, wanting to get away from a violent situation and having to walk into another, right? Folks like Michael Jackson, Woody Allen, R. Kelly, Kevin Spacey, take advantage of that system, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say power. When somebody is saying to you, I need a job to feed myself, and that person says, well, if you sleep with me, then you can have that job, or I'll give you some money, right? That's not rape. We got it?
Yeah.
It's rape. It's not rape. Because that's what we do in the rape culture that we live in, right? We say, oh, well, they're an adult. She, he, they could have said no. What were they doing in that room? Why were they dressed like that? I would never do that. Where are the parents? I know we've heard all these things. Yes, I'm not the only one. Okay. Yes. And I know some people feel called out right now or called in because you have said some of these things. And you think some of these things. And sometimes you think these things about some people and not about others. Right? So sometimes if it's a male presenting person, we say, oh, well, they're big and strong. They should have been able to fight them off. Not understanding that power has nothing to do with physical agility or muscle strength or tone, right? Power has to do with the fact that you can make it so I will never work again. Power has to do with intimidation, fear. I don't know what you can do or will do to me. Do we understand that difference? Right? And so when we talk about the culture, I want us to be thinking about all these different dynamics simultaneously, right? The simultaneity of these systems working together. And I say that because I don't want to sit here and fixate on R. Kelly. Like, I just don't like doing that in any, ever. Or Bill Cosby, or any of these men, right? I'm not interested in fixating on the actors. I want us to fixate on the larger systemic processes that enable them to continue doing what they do without accountability at all, right? That also enable for other abusers to continue to work through this very system. Do we know who Jameis Winston is? Somebody, can you have that mic? Can someone tell the group who Jameis Winston is? I saw a hand here. You want to tell us?
I can do it.
You're like, I know, but I don't want to say nothing. Does anybody want to tell us who Jameis Winston is? Somebody who's excited to tell us who Jameis Winston is.
I would say I'm excited, but he was the quarterback for Florida State, and currently plays in the NFL. He's a Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback.
Okay. What else do you know about him?
That's all I know here.
Okay. Anybody know anything else about Jameis Winston?
He was just accused of rape a couple years ago. I think was found not guilty or something like that.
Let's keep going.
So he was accused of rape by multiple women while he was at Florida State University. And then he was a finalist for the Heisman Trophy while that case was going on. Then the lawsuit was dropped and he countersued one of the women for tortious interference. And then he was drafted in the first round by Buccaneers.
Yes! Woo! Sorry, I just it makes me so mad.
I believe also while he was at Florida State, he was arrested for stealing crab legs out of a supermarket and stuffing them down his pants, and he got out of it because of his footballness. And it's become a joke. I don't even know sports, but I know about this, because how do you sneak frozen crab legs down your pants and get out of a store? And how do you do something so obviously physically blatant and make it? But also recently, I think in the past 18 months or so, he sexually assaulted his Uber driver. Some of his football playing buddies put him in an Uber because he was drunk at a club. And they don't guess guys don't have the girl code. So they put him in the car by himself with the driver. He got in the front seat and assaulted her. And this is post, I guess, wherever he's playing now.
So I didn't know about this last story.
Yeah. I drove Uber for a hot sex, so I knew about those.
Okay. But I trying to cover this for me. But I brought him up randomly because I want us to also be thinking about the fact that we have folks in the room who know him as a football player who plays for the Buccaneers, or who played for the Buccaneers, or I'm not sure, I don't really care who he plays, right? Who know nothing else about him. who know nothing else about him, right? There are a whole host of football players' names I could have thrown out just now. And still can't. And just chose him. Right? Deliberately. There's a whole documentary about James Winston. Right? And the case is so egregious. And there is so much evidence. And the university worked so hard to protect him because they wanted him to have the Heisman and they wanted him to be drafted. Okay? I bring this up because when we talk about faves, we are not just talking about singers and rappers and actors. We are talking about people who you sit on your couch on Sundays and you pull out your chicken wings and you watch them run into each other and throw balls into hoops and flags and all the other things, right? I don't watch these sports, as you cannot tell, right? We're also talking about people who you go and eat dinner with. I'm sorry to tell you, because they are your friends, and they are your family, and they are your partners, and they are your brothers and sisters and cousins, and you love them, and they are your faves. Okay? I'm so sorry to be the person to give you that news, right? They're my friends and family too, because we're all in the same culture. We're all in the same system. We are all socialized in the very exact same ways. Unfortunately, none of us can operate outside of the system that we are currently born into, raised into, socialized into, have citizenship or not have citizenship, or how we ever embody ourselves or move through this world. None of us can actually be immune and walk around in a vacuum or a bubble and avoid all of that shit. It's impossible, right? Okay? So what I'm saying to you is, when we talk about faves, I don't want you to actually create distance between yourself and those people. Those people, the bad apples, the bad guys over there, and they're not all men. Okay? And they're not all black. Okay? And I want us to think about this because there are implications for how we think about, and I'm going to say this word even though we're not doing high theory today, theorize this issue, right? So some of you all know Mickey Kendall. Have you heard of Mickey Kendall? She and Jamie Nesbitt Golden came up with this term, fast tail girls, as a hashtag on Twitter. And they were talking about, a few years ago, about all the ways that young black girls in particular are overly sexualized in society, right? The ways that young black girls are seen as Jezebels, are seen as folks who are inherently sexual. They happen to switch their hips a little bit faster or have bigger butts at age 12, and somehow they are women already. If they develop earlier, or if they show any sign of any type of interest in their body, right? They become fast-tailed girls, right? And fast-tailed girls, the concept is important because it's actually very much so deeply rooted in rape culture. It's another one of those justifications, right? It's linked, it's like a cousin of why she wearing that. Why was her skirt so short? She wanted it. Did you see her? Well, she's not a virgin, right? Anybody who's ever heard of the video, the sexual assault video that was taken of R. Kelly with the 14-year-old girl, there were people who said, well, she looked experienced. She looked experienced in being sexually assaulted by a grown man. She looked like she had done that before. That was a justification, right? So Mickey Kendall tells us, the problem is not unique to black communities, but this is not a call for outside assistance. This is a message for those outside our communities to address the racialized misogyny in their communities that perpetuates the idea that black women as Jezebels, the idea of black women as Jezebels. Any solution to this problem will require society to address all the racist, sexist tropes that frame women of color as sexually available and unrapeable. If we are all to be free, we must all be willing to stand against rape culture, no matter how it is expressed. Right? That means when it's uncomfortable, when your friend says something, when your friend jokes about what they're gonna do on a Friday night, oh, we're gonna go out and get so-and-so drunk because I've been wanting to hit that for a while, I'm about to smash. And you're like, yeah! No one's ever heard that before? Just me? I'm just checking. Y'all can talk to me, right? This is a safe space, right? It's a challenging but safe space, right? And I'm being very serious about this, right? Because what I'm trying to tell you with this conversation is that theory is not enough, right? When we think about the ideal case, the ideal world where we simply kind of think through these ideas and nebulous concepts, where everyone kind of contorts themselves and conforms to these ideas that just kind of like fall out of the air, like that's not real. But in the real world, people are truly imperfect, truly and deeply imperfect, including all of us. And they require that we challenge ourselves and also challenge one another, right? I'm not gonna go all like bell hooks and like the uses of love and all this stuff. But what I'm gonna say is like, if you have people in your life who you know are trash, and you know when your friends are trash, we all know, and we know when we're trash. I think we know when we're trash, but we also know when our friends know we're trash, right? It's our responsibility to do something about that. Because this is the implication, right? This is the consequence. I think we frequently think, oh, I can do this kind of trash stuff to myself, and it doesn't matter. It's okay if I'm trash, if I kind of like participate in these cultural artifacts on my own terms, it won't affect anybody but me. That's a lie. That's a lie. Especially when we consider situatedness, right? There are people in this room who are different races, genders, sexual orientations, embodiments, all of that matters. Correct? When y'all look at me, you see a very tall, black woman, right? You may notice that there is a ring on my finger. You may think that I'm heterosexual, right? You may take those type of liberties and think those things, right? All of that stuff that you see matters to how I am then assigned a hierarchy of power, right? It also matters in terms of how I move through the world. It affects my access to certain options in terms of how I decide to engage with others and how much privilege I may have in certain situations. And that goes for each person in the room, right? The bare fact of the matter is, if I see for instance, heterosexual cisgender white male wilding out at the bar, and I walk up and say, hey, Jim Bob, you are, I always use Jim Bob, you are wilding out, and you need to calm it down. There are non-men in this space, you are making non-men uncomfortable. Me saying that, shocker, this is plot twist, has a different impact than if another cisgender, heterosexual, white man said the very same words in the exact same way. Do we know that? Yes. It's trash. It's not good, right? I'm not saying that this is a good thing. What I'm saying is that collect your own people. Collect your people, right? It is not the responsibility of those who are at the margins. It's not the responsibility of those who are the harmed ones, the ones who are most harmed, to do that work for other communities. It is not the responsibility for the little girls who are harmed by folks like R. Kelly. It is not the responsibility of the women who have been harmed by folks like Bill Cosby to have to do the labor, the emotional, physical, and mental labor constantly to try and convince everyone else that they have been harmed. It's not the responsibility of everyone who is at those margins, who is enduring that pain, to have to tell everyone else that they are human and that they matter, right? We all have a responsibility to do that work. And even more so within our networks. Within our networks. Within our networks. Do we get that? Because when we step back and say, that doesn't affect me, what we're saying is, A, I don't give a shit. Second, what we're saying is, well, it affects somebody, somewhere. Good luck. They'll handle it. Are we cool with that? I mean, is that how we want to live our lives, or no? Yes? I'm assuming that if we're in this room, that's not how we live our lives. I mean, that's my assumption, right? So the thing that we have to start thinking about is transformative solutions. Okay? Do we know what transformative solutions look like? Restorative and transformative solutions? Does someone know what restorative justice is? Who can give me like a nice definition of restorative justice? Y'all heck of slime. Come on. Nobody?
Restorative justice comes from traditional Native American practices and usually works outside of the established legal system to convene circles, usually involving both accused parties and the harmed parties, to cooperatively bring to light the actual harm that has been done to the community, and then create a sense of personal responsibility to the community in order to create a solution that will restore the harm done. And in that way, it also seeks to rehabilitate the offender as well as the harm parties.
Correct. Okay. Do we all get that? Okay, so that's partly linked to the idea that we don't need to have prisons. We ain't gonna talk about that today. But I bring up restorative justice to say that when we think about ways to address the harm and hold these folks accountable, hold folks in our networks, in our communities, and our circles accountable, we have to first think about the harm. We have to actually name the harm, right? So I heard earlier someone said, oh, Jameis Winston was accused of rape. No, he raped people. He is a rapist because he raped people. That's just a fact of the matter. We're not the Associated Press. He raped people because we believe victims because they were raped, okay? We have to first name what happened. We have to address the harm specifically because it happened. That's the starting point. The only way you can restore harm is to first acknowledge that the harm exists. Yes? I'm just saying. I don't know how else you can do it. I mean, if the milk is spilled, and you're like, I don't see the milk. You don't know how you clean it up. Okay? Now, do we know what transformative justice is? Anybody have any idea what transformative justice is? Y'all lying. I'm looking at people who I know it. Okay. Dan, right there.
From my understanding, it's sort of whereas restorative justice is sort of a reaction, transformative justice is more of a preventative care, where it's you sort of it's actions that prevent there ever to be restorative justice to be even needed. So it's just a way to change the system. If anyone can define it better, that'd be great.
We'll work on it. Thank you.
I feel like part of some of the silence is, just in the name you can kind of gauge what it is. But I find myself trying to think of examples where this has been enacted. I think that's why it's difficult because
it's gonna come up in this space in a minute.
Yeah, these systems are so foundational and ingrained, and so I would I wanted to be oh, mute R. Kelly, but then it's who's I know I'm trying to mute him, but then I got Femi back home, I love him. So I think that was part of what's so difficult is we can envision what we would want it to be, but because these systems are so omnipresent that it's hard to draw on a quick example.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. So we're going to both restorative and transformative, and I appreciate both of these comments. Thank you so much. I like the idea of thinking of it as preventative, right? And systemic. So thinking of transformative justice as something that we do to get to the root of a problem, right? So often, I bring up this is one of my favorite articles ever, written in the history of ever. This comes from a book called Captive Genders. It's all about thinking about trans and queer folks and actually building movements that actually address their issues. Rocket science or something. But actually thinking about what the issues are facing these communities by thinking about what the true issue is, right? So often when we talk about justice, we think about these kind of safe options, like safe truths, right? So when we think about, let's think about, you said R. Kelly. So Mute R. Kelly is interesting, right? Because that's an option, right? Mute R. Kelly is a good way to think about not consuming R. Kelly's music, not actively engaging in the process of being an audience member to someone who is actively harming others. Cool. Is it enough? No. Is it transformative? No. Unfortunately, it's not. Right? Thinking about the kind of more underlying problem with someone like R. Kelly, we have to think about the systems that make an R. Kelly, that promote and facilitate an R. Kelly. Right? We have to think about the larger cultural processing behind him. Right? We have to think about record labels who, thank you God, they dropped him. Right? Record labels that kept him up for so long. Right? Arenas that were serving up, that were letting him have concerts there. Right? We have to think about industries and other artists who were willing to do songs and work with him. Right? When we think about transformative justice, we have to think about the larger structures and systems and frameworks that enable a process to continue to do harm. Right? Do we see the difference there? So I always bring up this example because they talk about the ways that we typically address issues facing queer and trans communities. One of the examples that they have here, oh my gosh, my eyelashes are so long, so I can barely see through them. But it says queer and trans people, poor people, people of color, and immigrants have minimal access to quality health care. So the official solution, the one that's easy, is like legalize same-sex marriage, which makes no fucking sense, right? To allow people with health benefits from their jobs to share with their same-sex partners. Okay, so people who are not interested in getting married, who don't have partners, who are unemployed, still don't have health care, correct? So that's not a transformative solution. So a transformative solution is actually thinking about providing health care, strengthening Medicaid and Medicare, winning universal health care, fighting for transgender health benefits, and ending deadly medical neglect of people who are in state custody. You know, the baseline addressing the problem, right? So I always bring up this example when we think about the issue that's at hand. What is the underlying problem, right? Let's talk about this. What is the underlying problem? Why do we have a culture where someone like R. Kelly can actively harm young people, young women, for decades? Where was he finding young women? It ain't that far from here. Kenwood. McDonald's. He was going to local businesses. He was kicking it at the school, right? Police officers knew him. And they were like, if you give me concert tickets, I won't say nothing. Right? It's not as if R. Kelly is just kind of walking around, right? So people say, I love new R. Kelly. I'm not saying don't do that. What I'm saying is, I want us to also think bigger and deeper, right? Broad is great. Broad is fantastic, right? It helps us to start thinking about some ideas and brainstorming, but we have to also dig deep, right? Go ahead.
I think sometimes one of our problems with coming to transformative justice solutions is that we often see harm and violence as an inevitability. Like, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of who the next story is about. Instead of thinking about it, like you said, in terms of broader systems. And okay, maybe there will be another person, but how are we going to prepare for that? If we know this harm is coming, how are we looking ahead to maybe stop it, to maybe deal with it before it's 20 years in the making?
I was thinking a similar thing. I feel like involving rape culture in general, a lot of people try to focus on, okay, what are we going to do after the fact? Okay, this is how we're going to help after the fact. But I don't think, just like how you were talking about the before, in between, and the end, a lot of people tend to focus on the end because they're like, okay, well, it happened. And other people have mindsets who's like, oh, it's going to happen to somebody. It's just a matter of who, when, where, why, how. And a lot of people normalize it. Not to say that it's right, but people normalize rape culture. They just hope it's not them. And people don't think to say, okay, well, we need to do this to prevent this from happening. We need to stop certain ideologies for people to think any of this is even okay to think, to function with. And then it's just a process of breaking down belief systems that we've built up over time in society. Like how you were talking about the, oh, what was she wearing? Like, things like that. Like, those are beliefs that have been built up in people to find excuses for things like this. And I feel like that's why
Yeah, this is a question, and part of the reason why I came here, because I was just kind of curious if any of the people who've been accused or convicted, if there are any of them that are redeemable. And then also, I've often wondered, for example, if MLK, for example, along the same line of question, if you ever got Harvey Weinstein and accused by women that he used his power and his influence to have affairs with women, and we would wipe his history and all the good that he has done.
Wait, let me think. Hold on a second.
So it's not Q&A yet, but don't use fine. I gotta just answer it. Let me see how it is. Let's talk about redeemability. It's almost time. Okay. The thing about being redeemable, right? Those of us who are committed to a justice framework, those of us who are committed to the liberation of all people, believe that nobody is irredeemable. We believe that nobody should be thrown away. Specifically, folks who are the most marginalized, specifically Black folks, queer folks, trans folks, folks who are the most kind of affected by the system as it is today. So I'll say that first. But what I will say is that that's not what we're talking about, right? That's not the focus, right? So when we talk about a restorative justice framework, what we're centering is the folks who are harmed, not the folks who are harming, right? And so when we say, well, are they redeemable? We have completely decentered the folks who they've harmed. We are now talking about the people who are doing the fuck shit, right? And that's not, I'm not invested in that right now, or maybe not ever, right? Because if we focus on restoring the harm, the idea, this is the idea, this is the magic, that if we focus on restoring the harm, if we focus on justice, a transformative justice framework, then the people who are doing the harming will redeem themselves. Yes. Right? So we don't have to do that work of trying to save them, right? That's also patriarchal, right? This idea that we have to see if these men, because they did all this work, they paid whatever money or they did whatever thing, if we can keep them, right? Rather, what we should be thinking is, how can we ensure that those folks who are the most marginalized are centered in everything that we do? How can we ensure that all the work that we are doing ensures that everybody is safe and can eat and is not harmed and survives and is allowed to walk outside and breathe and be without fear that something will happen to them? The idea then would be that those people, we wouldn't have to worry about them being redeemed, right? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I understand the sentiment, right? Because we love folks. But we don't start there, right? Okay? And I also want to address the idea that sometimes it seems the harm is inevitable, that it's just going to kind of happen to anybody. So that's why I was asking us about what's happening, where it's happening, when it's happening, how these things are happening with R. Kelly, for instance. He's at schools. People knew he was doing it and said he did nothing. They also were complicit in that. They helped him, right? He has a whole group around him of folks who actively enabled and propped him up, right? So what happens when we start thinking dynamically about how we can focus on that type of stuff, right? Or when we can all think dynamically about disrupting at our universities or disrupting at our place of work, right? Disrupting these types of harms at places that we occupy or that we patronize, where we are consumers, right? So not just muting R. Kelly, but actually disrupting the systems that enable an R. Kelly, right? Saying, you know what? We're not just gonna mute an R. Kelly, we're actually gonna start thinking about how we think about male performers in general. Let's just have a dialogue about what they're saying. Let's just talk about it. Let's just name it, right? And I say male performers because there is a milieu, again I said they're not all male, there's a milieu in hip hop. We know this. Okay, cool. Right? What about if we say, oh, well, Dr. Dre, we know what you did. So we think it's disgusting that you actually have a brand called Beats by Dre. What if we said that, as opposed to, and I'm sorry if y'all have beats in your pocket, as opposed to buying them? What if we actually had the conversation? Right? That's the first step. Naming is the first step. Right? Challenging is how we get to the next step. Standing prostrate and upright and resolute and saying this is something that we will not abide. And we're going to attack it systemically and not just individually. Do we see the difference?
This kind of question. Something that I feel like I'm struggling with is thinking about how transformative justice and like thinking about structures and systems, like feels kind of disconnected for me from like my personal experience with how I like internalize rape culture, and thinking about like myself as a young girl, like feeling like just wanting, I guess this is kind of going in a different direction, but like looking to predators, I guess, for like attention, to feel desired, and like how I felt like I was getting so many messages. I'm gonna start crying. Getting so many messages about like so much about like the things about me that like aren't desirable, and how particularly thinking about like young people at these margins are like told these messages, I guess, like through rape culture, and how that becoming internalized in a way where I feel like these kind of like structural solutions don't necessarily like address the like individual personal part. So I guess my question is like, how do you feel like those relate? And I think kind of like what you were just saying about like naming it, to me that seems like the most effective way, like talking to young people and like children. I think a lot of people shared stories about like their first memories of R. Kelly, like being like they knew something was up, but nobody would tell them.
Correct.
And I think for me, it's the same thing. Like, I was pretty like protected from pop culture because my mom hates consumerism, but like I didn't like the first things I learned about R. Kelly were like horrible things, but to me it wasn't like, oh, this is horrible. It was like, oh, this is a joke or something like that. And how like the fact that nobody would name the problem kind of like kept me complicit in it, because nobody, I think particularly with young people, will talk about it.
Thank you for that. So I think that's a very important thing that you're bringing up, right? We're talking about desire, we're talking about kind of what I think Mickey was getting us to, this idea of fast out girls and attraction, and how older men in particular, or just certain folks who are preying on young girls will, they know what they're doing, right? And they often do operate in ways where they kind of focus on things that society says is wrong with you, and that's part of grooming, right? So grooming is the process of saying, here's this thing about you, I like it or I don't like it, I'm gonna shape this in a way that is attractive to me over time, and it kind of like becomes a habitual process, right? So I wanna answer that to say that at the individual level, I think naming absolutely is important. But what I also think that we struggle with in multiple communities is silencing. So even when folks are trying to name things, we don't listen. And we don't make space for survivors, and we don't make space for folks who have been harmed or folks who are struggling with these issues in these systems. And that's why I talk about your network and the responsibility that we have to one another, right? To love one another, to be present with one another. A lot of this work is also being challenged to actually be present and be a full human being, and to allow other folks the space to be human beings as well, right? To experience the full range of human emotion, which we know that some folks are often denied. Specifically, folks at the margins, queer folks, trans folks, young black women in particular, are often denied the right to anger, the right to harm, to say, I've been harmed. I think what we heard from LaToya and Mickey, that they're unrapeable, right? That somehow if something happens to their body, it's okay, because their body is not theirs anyway, right? So, to your point, at the individual level, I think, yes, it's absolutely about naming, but it's also actively about combating silencing and combating erasure, right? Ensuring that if we are specifically thinking about our own social location, our own social position, how we actively engage in erasure and silencing, how our positionality, how our situatedness often lets us erase people by not listening. Oh, that's not something I care about, that doesn't affect me, that's those people over there, this is not an important issue, I'm not gonna read that article, I'm not gonna read that book, I'm not gonna talk about this issue, that's not my problem, right? And then when it happens, to somebody else, oh, I don't know if it happened or not. Maybe it didn't. Those people are not really human to me, right? And so what ends up happening there is it denies that group of folks access to themselves. It denies them full access to their emotions and experiences. And that's something we have to actively work against as well. Yeah?
So speaking on, for those of us who occupy positionalities with, I would say like a more tangible degree of privilege than others, I'm questioning how you manage the burnout that comes with calling people out, right? Especially like so frequently.
Oh, sorry, I'm grinning. Burnout is hard, right? But imagine the burnout of having to endure that and not having people listen to you or even know that you actually exist. So no shade, but I don't know. Burnout's complex. So my attitude, and I'm very Malcolm X-ian about this, I think the people with the most privilege should do the most work.
Absolutely. Yes.
I think the people who are closest to power should do the most work.
Yes.
I think white people should collect white people. I think straight people should collect straights. I think cis folks should collect cisses. I think that's how it should work. And I think that makes the most sense. I think that a lot of times what happens, and I might not be talking about you, but this might hit home for you as well. I think that a lot of times marginalized folks feel the need to collect up. We talk up to people who have more power than us. Please listen to me. You have the resources, you have the power, you have the money, you have this, you have that. Please, white people, please, straight people, please, capitalists, please, whomever. I'm a person. I matter. I'm so important to you. If this happens to me, just imagine it could also happen to you. That's work that we shouldn't do. That's work that will cause you, absolutely, will cause you burnout. And the sad part is, it often doesn't work. Right? So, what I think is that for folks, especially folks who are multiply marginalized, we have to invest our time and energy in the type of work, the type of restorative work that is not just restorative to our community and others, but also restorative to ourselves. And that restorative work does not mean begging someone else to believe us, begging someone else to see us, right? That's not work that we can be doing. That's why I'm looking specifically at people's faces and saying, collect your people, right? I'm not saying to them or to someone else, hey, collect that person for him or for, no, I'm not doing that, right? Like, I understand that burnout is real, and if you're burnt out, you need to rest. Lay down, go to sleep, get a massage. Haji Healing Salons on 79th and Cottage. I just went yesterday, I got acupuncture and Reiki. Massage Infy, you can get a monthly $55 massage. It's kind of high, but it's cheap for massage for monthly. Thank you. I think so too. My friend said it wasn't, but I think it is. And I hit that up yesterday. Reiki, acupuncture, and massage. I'm feeling golden today, right? But burnout is real. And I think that we have to also understand that if we are committed to justice and liberation, we are going to experience fatigue. We are human people. And when we are tired, we have to rest. We have to sustain ourselves. We have to eat. We have to drink water. We have to moisturize, get you a sheet mask, do all that stuff, right? And there's nothing about that stuff that is wrong. None of that stuff is mutually exclusive with justice. None of that is mutually exclusive with doing this work. Audre Lorde told us this, right? She said that self-care is actually revolutionary, right? So we have to do this work if we are actually going to live. If you are dead, you can't survive this system. So, you know, so I can talk about it. But my point being that sustain yourself first, right? Take care of yourself first, but don't use your energy toward the ends that aren't going to get you anywhere, right? Putting energy in trying to get someone who loves MAGA or Trump or whatever, and be like, please, like, don't be so trash. I'm not doing that. And I'm also not going outside and punching no Nazi. I'm not breaking no nails. I'm not messing up my wrists. I'm not getting no bruises. Somebody near them can punch them. And I'm real about that. I hold that down. You're not going to see me punching no Nazi. Now, will I punch somebody in my neighborhood? Maybe. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I don't punch people, y'all. I mean, I fight, but never mind, this is important. So, I got the job. But you know what I'm saying, right? Use your energy wisely. You have only so much. You have only so much, and you are only one person. And you cannot think you are not a superhero. You are not magical. Black women ain't magical. We are not magic. We have the process of survival. We have figured out how to survive a lot of shit. We have been forced to navigate multiple systems simultaneously. That is knowledge. That is experience. We just have a long resume. We have a long resume. Okay? But that does not mean that we have to do every job. Can we do one more question? I'm getting thirsty.
I just read last weekend that a lot of universities have been getting sued by guys or the accused by not having the due process significant enough. So what would you say to that in terms of using your power and using your influence without exposing your institution or your organization to lawsuits, counter lawsuits?
I don't care about university things, too. That's all I got. I don't care about that. I don't care. I'm not tethered to any university. I don't care what happens to these universities. I don't know what to say. Yeah, they got money and they're all capitalists, and they're gonna get sued anyway. These universities are sued constantly, and white boys who harm people like to sue people, and they be snitching. I'm sorry. I'm like, that's just not something I'm invested in at all. If they want to sue a university, they're gonna sue a university over something. If it's not, if it's because they white and they got in, or they didn't get in, they think somebody black got in, they're gonna sue about that. Or, like somebody told them they couldn't wear a racist Halloween costume, they're gonna sue about that. Or it's free speech this, and they're gonna sue about that. Or I'm not invested in that conversation. What I'm invested in is, if there is harm, we address the harm, period. That's it. There's harm, we address the harm, we see who's being harmed, we talk to them, we listen to them, we name the harm, and we try our best to do better. That's it. I'm not, universities ain't shit. I'm sorry,